The Immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm doing a collection video of the Sega 32X. The Sega 32X is something I purchased back in the day, and it was far from perfect. Ultimately, I was disappointed, but there were a few games in its library that held me over until the next thing came out. And so what I'm doing today is showing my US Sega 32X collection, and I'm doing this to help other fellow collectors out to see what was released in the US, the packaging, and talk a little bit about the system. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy the video. Alright, here is my complete US Sega 32X collection. I don't have all the variations, but I do have at least one of each game and a couple boxed units. I have a loose one that I utilize as well in my game room. So here we go. So I want to first talk about hardware. I have two versions of the hardware. I have the original release, and then later on there was a Virtua Fighter pack-in, and I'm going to talk about kind of this is my box unit. It's almost 100% complete. I think I might be missing a bag or so, but anyways, here's the instruction manual. The 32X came with a lot of things, so I want to talk about this. This is the original manual for the 32X. It came with an additional sheet talking about how to hook it up. As Sega did hardware revisions, they also had to include additional things with the 32X. So there's the base unit of the 32X, which hooks up to your Sega Genesis Model 1 or Model 2. There's a spacer used. That was for additional later models. Also, there was an adapter for the original Sega Genesis. Mine's still in the bag. And that was to connect where the AV cable went for the original Genesis. Two metal clips that went into the cartridge port of the Sega Genesis. If you had a Model 2, you used that cable. There's additional AC. There's the AC adapter that came with my Sega 32X. You're probably wondering what that is. Well, what I've been told, or what I've researched, is that some Model 2 revisions of the Sega Genesis were incompatible with the 32X. And it was fine if you had a Sega CD attached to your unit, but if you didn't, if you just had a 32X, you would need to plug this into the expansion port where normally your Sega CD would be plugged in, and that would make it work. Pretty interesting. This is the AV cable, mono, that came with the 32X as well. Various bags that everything came bundled in. My system, the box is a little beat up, but it is in pretty good shape. And so I've had this in my collection a long time. And so I want to start with talking about the games. This video is to focus on the physical releases in North America. Now there's 4 games that were not released in North America. There's 2 PAL games. Dark Side, it's a space shooter. FIFA 96. Japan had a Romance 4, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4. And then the very uber rare Surgical Strike released in Brazil. And there was a aftermarket re-release of that, and I did a video of that on my channel. I can put the link below to Surgical Strike. So here it is, 36 games released in North America, and these are all the North American releases. Complete in box, best as possible. Some of my boxes are a little dinged up, but I wanted to share this for people wanting to pursue this strange Sega collection. And you know, the 32X was kind of a stopgap before the Sega Saturn came out. I waited till it went out on clearance before I picked one up, and you know, honestly, I was kind of disappointed. There wasn't many games that came out, but there are a few gems on this subset of Sega collections, and so I do think that there are a few games to revisit And it's pretty interesting. I think its popularity is still stays pretty strong. I think part of it is the time it was released, the mid-90s, 94 in North America. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. Typically, a Sega 32X game would come in a couple different things. Some came in clamshell, many came in a paper sleeved box, a lot like the later release Sega Genesis games. The cartridges themselves were unique, and they looked a little bit different to differentiate them between the Sega Genesis and, they didn't want to confuse people. Hey, this is not a Sega Genesis game. What was confusing though is when the Saturn came out, there was a cartridge slot, and no, you couldn't play your 32X games on it. And the manuals, which mostly came black and white, especially with the cardboard boxed games. The clamshell games came in color. And so, and there you go. There was also, you could also send away for Sega Visions, and a slip was included with most games. So here we go. And here is the North American released games. Afterburner, BC Racers, Blackthorn, which is a pretty good game. Actually, one of the better 32X games. Brutal Above the Claw. Cosmic Carnage. And here's the ill-fated port of Doom. And the reason why is that this Doom was inferior to other versions at the time, and so that's why the 32X, one of the few reasons why the 32X was criticized, because it was supposed to be really a next gen kind of add-on, and this version of Doom is not that good compared to some other versions. Fred Couples 36 Great Holes. Knuckles Chaotix, which is a pretty good Sonic style game. Actually enjoyed that one quite a bit. One of the better, I would say one of the better 32X games. If you're going to go revisit 32X, Knuckles Chaotix is pretty good. Calibri. Metalhead. Mortal Kombat 2. It's kind of a slightly enhanced Mortal Kombat 2 of Sega Genesis. That's part of the problem, is some of these games that came out, they just were slightly better than the Genesis counterpart. And so it didn't, many of the titles didn't show the true power of the 32X. Some did, some were decent, many weren't. Motocross. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. NFL Quarterback Club. Pitfall. My Pitfall sealed. I've had it a long time. I found it in a Goodwill that was with many other titles, Sega Genesis titles that came out at the same time. Just one of those strange finds. Primal Rage. RBI Baseball 95. Shadow Squadron. Shadow Squadron wasn't a bad game. There was a couple arcade ports, Space Harrier being one of them. There it is, Spider-Man Web of Fire, complete. This was a very difficult game to acquire. I've had mine many years. It just gets tougher to get. It's an okay side-scrolling Spider-Man game. It's an okay Spider-Man game. Is it worth the price? I don't know. You can play these many different ways, and for people that want the physical copy of it, great. But it is a very expensive game now, for many reasons. Limited supply, availability, low print amount, and it's a Spider-Man game, so you have all the fans of Spider-Man pursuing it as well. Lots of challenges getting that one. The underrated Starship Bridge Simulator. So that's a good Star Trek game. Kind of gets overlooked by Star Wars Arcade, which is a competent arcade conversion, and there is an upgraded mode in it. This is the game that essentially got me to get a 32X, Star Wars Arcade. Even though at the time I wanted more RPGs to come out, this was a good 32X game. It was okay. Like for me, this and a couple other games made the 32X worth it for me to own, but it's not going to be for everybody. T-Mech, kind of a harder to get 32X game. Tempo, Tough Man Contest, Virtua Fighter, which is a really good version of the arcade game. And so this is another game I thought that actually showed the strength of the 32X compared to Virtua Fighter 2, which was on the Sega Genesis, which is terrible. This was a decent port of the arcade game. Virtua Racing, I like Virtua Racing too. The Switch version of this, by the way, if you're going to play Virtua Racing now, play the Switch version. 60 frames. It's great. The last game, and a very difficult game to get complete, is World Series Baseball starring Deion Sanders. Very challenging game to get. I can't tell you how hard this is to get complete. It's going to be very challenging to track this one down complete. I've had this in my collection a long time. I missed the manual for a decade, and you know, I don't know, like 5 years ago or so. I don't know when exactly, but I did track down the manual I was missing. WWF Raw. WWF WrestleMania, the arcade game. I'm a big fan of the arcade game. It's pretty fun. Zaxxon's Mother Base 2000, which is not a bad game, actually. This is a game that often people don't talk about, but I actually enjoyed it. So, those are the cartridge-based releases for the Sega 32X. And so you just needed the 32X and a Sega Genesis to play those. The following, you needed both the Sega CD and the 32X to play. So there's Corpse Killer, and I got these. I think I got these at a yard sale when I first moved to Washington years ago, and I found them at a yard sale. A guy selling all the Sega stuff, and it was a good deal. So Fahrenheit have both the Sega CD and the 32X versions included. Night Trap, Slam City starring Scottie Pippen, and Supreme Warrior. And you know, the 32X looks a little bit better than the Sega CD, but not by much. It was just, to me, a total waste. It was like, oh, okay, I need this add-on and this add-on to play these. I'm not a full motion video fan overall. If I had a choice, I wouldn't be playing them, but some people are very nostalgic about this because they grew up with it. I know there's fans. Surgical Strike is probably one of my favorite full motion video games if you're gonna play one. I know there's fans of Night Trap. I know it got re-released, but it's just crazy. Yeah, so these are all sealed, and there it is. This is the complete US collection of Sega 32X. There's other variations of the console. There's probably several variations of each game. Little variations always being re-released and stuff. But if you're looking for at least one of each game, this is it. All 36 games. I hope this helps fellow collectors. Thanks for watching. So there you have it. The 32X had a few good games, and ultimately it was discontinued just a few years after it came out. What do you think? Do you collect the 32X? Have you played the 32X? Comment below, as I would love to hear from you. And I want to say thank you for the ongoing positive support. It means the world to me as I continue to make videos and share gaming videos and collecting videos. I haven't done a collecting video in a while, so I wanted to do that and share a collection with you. Thank you so much. This is the Immortal John Hancock. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You take care.